let's talk about specific technology in terms of automation. Closed, automated, commercial scale technology and the design to alleviate manufacturing issues. Anyone can jump in here, but what are your thoughts on how important they are, what they are, how you're using them, etc.?
Yeah, a closed and an automated process is really critical for at least 3 reasons. The first reason is that it will increase the consistency of the manufacturing process, mainly by decreasing the manual operations. The second reason is that it will improve the manufacturing failure rate by reducing the risk of contamination and the risk of human error. And finally, it will improve efficiency and scalability by reducing the manpower requirements. So yes, we have to go in that direction, and there are many equipment suppliers that are working on those solutions for the moment, and really, but the best solution would have to have a closed and automatic system which is able to run the process end to end without any open operation and limiting human intervention. Because for the moment, it's you can automate one of the steps, but it's not usual to see a system that can really, from really the leukapheresis until the fill and finish, that can manage all those steps.
I definitely agree with what Thomas is saying. That very much makes sense. The closed process is absolute must to be able to supply as many patients as possible. But of course, it's a question of your development allocated costs. You need necessarily to invest to those systems. If you are lucky, the devices that are available on the market you can use directly. But if your process is more complicated, then you need to work with the other parties to develop something specific for your manufacturing process. But I agree definitely that these closed systems are must, and it can also get down or lower your running facility costs, because then you don't necessarily need those highest, cleanest levels, and you can operate those devices in the area which is not so costly to operate, to run.
Sure. I want to make sure that we get to the second poll question, which will fit in nicely here. So we asked our audience, what are the top 3 critical factors you look for when considering automation? And we asked them to select up to 3. And here's what they said. So reduce process variability at 56%, faster therapy development or time to market at about 36%, increased efficiency of process data management, 27%, reduction of manufacturing failure rates, about 39%, and lower FTE educational requirements at about 7%. So right in line with what you're thinking? Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, it's fully agree with the output of those of that pool. So this is really what I mentioned, and so really the key word it's consistency, reduce manufacturing failure rate, and improve efficiency and scalability. And yes, we have to. It will improve those challenges that we face for the moment.
Well, to me, it's a little bit surprising that you said, I think, if I remember correctly, that only 39% people think that it should aim the reduction of the failure rate, because of course in the autologous space, particularly again speaking about CAR T cells or any other approach, working with the fresh leukapheresis from the patient and with autologous product, the failure rate, based on what I hear from different people or different conferences, is relatively high. So I think one of the aims of automation is, of course, to get your process to certain robustness level, to reduce your process variability, and definitely to reduce the manufacturing failure rates, because this is something what is, based on my understanding, causing also this very high price tag. Because as I think Alan said, of course, that the producers, manufacturers are paid only for the products that were dosed to the patients or that reached certain level of efficiency. Sorry, efficacy.
Sure, sure. Thomas, I have a question from the audience that I think might be best for you. And here it is. There are a lot of young companies out there that offer manufacturing starting materials and cell lines. How big of a bottleneck do you see this being, given that some of these new or small companies will likely go away or fail, and a clinical progression will be compromised? Yet larger companies aren't readily offering something similar to help developers move forward safely and without a ton of risk. So, Thomas, yeah, I'd like to ask you that question. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure, it's a key aspect, because really the target, it's with allogeneic, it's only with one collection of an healthy donor. We have to maximize the output. So that means that we have to produce hundreds of billion cells, because obviously, if we can only make 10 to 20 billion cells per collection, we could have an issue to find a donor and so on. So yes, it's really a key aspect, and this is why the yield, it's a challenge that we have to solve for allogeneic therapies in the coming years.
Okay, great, thank you. Before I move on, just want to make sure if Mark or Ludek, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the question is probably one of the key risks to our industry, because as Thomas was saying, I mean, the supply chain that exists today in cell therapy is pretty nascent. We all ideally look for multiple sources of raw materials and the like, and it just doesn't always exist. And as we look at some of these systems with the single use, there's Prodigy with a single use, I guess I'm going to call them disposables for lack of a better word, within the system. You still have to worry about that single point of manufacture within that for errors within that. And I know from experience that this has happened with different manufacturers, with companies I've been working with at different points in time. And I think it does impact the autologous setting more than the allogeneic, because as Thomas was kind of alluding to, not only are there the raw material pieces, but then you can kind of build up an inventory with allogeneic or with cell lines relative to the cell line based products relative to the autologous product, where your manufacturing is really occurring in just in time, if you will, from the standpoint of providing the product. But that raw material supply chain, I think, is a significant area that there's opportunity, but it is a risk right now for our industry.
Definitely agree with Mark. Of course, to mitigate such risks, it's again a must for each of the company to work on the alternatives, on the alternative raw materials. No matter on the fact that you don't see any issues with the supplier, it's always better to identify one or two alternatives to your key, most critical raw materials and test it functionally. So have in place sufficient functional testing and have it basically as a backup, because this is one of the very critical things that in case you face any issue with a supplier, it's not only about the business. Sometimes they face some force majeure issues within their facilities, and there is a gap then in supplies, and you are very easily getting into troubles. So investment into the key raw material alternatives is absolutely reasonable, and I would suggest to do it in any stages of clinical development.
Mm-hmm.